Now to the States, where the jury is currently being selected for another Harvey Weinstein trial taking place in Los Angeles. The former film producer is facing 11 more charges of abuse.
Well, the 70-year-old is currently serving 23 years in jail in New York after he was convicted for sexual assault in 2020. He denies the new charges.
Well, let's talk to women's rights attorney Gloria Allred, who joins us now from Los Angeles. Really good to see you this morning. Thanks for joining us. Look,
Thanks.
How have these new charges come to light, and when did they come to light?
Well, thank you very much for inviting me this morning. I remember that these new charges were announced about January 2020, and that's when I was in New York. We were beginning, that is, the prosecutor was beginning the New York criminal case. And in the New York criminal case, I represented 3 witnesses. I represented Mimi Haley, who ultimately was the key prosecution witness, and ultimately Harvey Weinstein was convicted of criminal sexual assault of Mimi Haley and sentenced to 20 years in New York State prison as a result. And he was also convicted of third-degree rape of another woman that I did not represent. But while this trial in New York was about to start, that's when the Los Angeles indictments were announced. But then that trial had to be delayed and is just in jury selection, as you said, and it began this week. And we're expecting opening arguments probably around October 24th in this Los Angeles case.
That he is a convicted sex offender serving time in jail. How hard is it for somebody like him, and don't get me wrong, nobody's got any sympathy for him, but how hard is it for someone like him to have a fair trial?
Well, that, of course, is what his defense attorneys are saying. He can't get a fair trial, that there's so much coverage of the fact that he was convicted in New York. And now there will be a great deal of coverage of this Los Angeles trial as well. And to top it all off, next month, there's a major motion picture coming out. And that's from the book by some journalists from the New York Times who reported some of the allegations in 2017 of women who are accusing Harvey Weinstein. So his attorneys are saying, delay the trial until after the feature film comes out, maybe at least until January. But this judge has refused to do that. She said, there's always going to be publicity about Harvey Weinstein. So she's not delaying it. However, the jurors are being questioned about how much they know about Harvey Weinstein. And of course, even if they know quite a bit of Harvey Weinstein, or at least allegations against him, doesn't mean they can't be fair and impartial. So that's really the question. Despite what they know, can they be fair and impartial and put what they've learned on the internet or from newspapers or on television aside and only decide the case based on the evidence that's presented in the courtroom in this trial? And that's what jurors are going to have to at least say that they are willing to do.
You've dealt with a lot of sort of high-profile cases. Can you talk to us about the sense of justice in all of this? Because these women who are making accusations against him now for this new trial, even if they are successful, it doesn't make any difference to him and his time in prison. I mean, I know it would add something like 140 years to his sentence,
Just a casual 140
but
years.
I mean, that it's irrelevant. He's likely to die in prison anyway, isn't he? So why is it? What sense of justice do they get, even though it doesn't change the outcome for him?
Well, that's a fair question, but it may change the outcome because he has appealed from the conviction in the New York case. And the highest court in New York, which is called the New York Court of Appeals, in California, we would call the highest court, the California Supreme Court. But he has requested that the highest court in New York hear the arguments about why he's saying he did not get a fair trial in New York. And of course, he wants that conviction to be reversed and to be free from having to serve a sentence in New York. Now, that argument's not going to happen until next year. And so we don't know what the highest court in New York will ultimately decide. But if in fact that conviction were reversed and he were free, well, if he's convicted in Los Angeles, he would still have to serve a sentence. But we don't know what's going to happen. I think he can get a fair trial. All judges are committed to doing their best to make sure that happens in California. And, you know, victims should be able to get justice too. And many of the victims in this case, and I represent two for whom charges have been filed here in this Los Angeles case, and one what we call a prior bad act witness. And, you know, they have been waiting for justice for a long time. And, you know, what they allege is that what happened to them happened in Los Angeles or Beverly Hills. And so they should have the opportunity to, you know, tell their truth in the courtroom, and then it'll be under oath, unlike just saying it for an interview to a reporter. It'll be under oath. They'll be cross-examined, and we'll see what the jury decides, because the jury, of course, they are the finders of fact, and they are the ultimate finders of fact. It's for the judge to state the law, but they'll decide if he's guilty or not guilty.
And what about the costs in all of this? I mean, he's a man of immense personal wealth. I mean, obviously, the last trial will have cost him a great deal. Will this be a hugely expensive enterprise for him?
No doubt. Absolutely. He's going to have to pay just a large amount of money to his two defense attorneys, and I'm sure he's got investigators investigating these victims or the alleged victims. And, you know, probably paralegals and many, many other people working on this case, backup. And of course, you know, he's divorced. He has young children. He's had to compensate many women who allege they were victims in settlements. So, you know, his lawyers are now complaining that the toilets and the holding tanks in the jail are not sanitary, that it's medieval conditions he's in. But you know what? It's not supposed to be the Ritz. It's not supposed to be, you know, a 5-star hotel when you're in jail. So she gave rather short shrift to the arguments of his defense counsel. But the point is, it's time for the jury to soon start. And you know, it's going to be tough on the victims. Let's face it. To be faced with a cross-examination by very experienced, tough defense attorneys who are going to try to undermine them, say that what they are saying now in court is inconsistent with what they've said to law enforcement or what they've given in interviews, to try to, you know, portray them in a light least that is not favorable to them, to try to smear them, to try to perhaps confuse them, to try to suggest that they have motives like money or fame, when many of them, they're just there to tell the truth. They're not going to get any financial gain from being a witness in a criminal case. They just want to do it for the cause of justice because they've been asked by law enforcement to testify, and they're willing to undergo this. And all I can say is I admire their courage. I commend them for willing to do it. It's the only way that our system can work, if people who are witnesses or victims are willing to help law enforcement and testify in a court of law so that there can be a just result.